As Epic said, my name's Kirsty Chadwick. I'm the founder and the CEO of a company called the Training Room Online. I founded the business in South Africa in 2008, subsequently started operating in the Middle East around 2015, the UK, Europe 2018, and then New Zealand and Australia from 2020. So we are a hugely passionate group of individuals in the EdTech world. So our focus on everything that we do is to create transformative learning experiences where we have technology as a powerful part of the enablement of the delivery of those solutions. I think a lot of it for us is driving educational change, but also this journey of lifelong learning. You know, we are all needing to be on a continuous journey of learning. And a lot of the way in which we've been learning over the last couple of years through the pandemic has really been a change in the way in which we live. So reality of learning today, if I start here, absolutely accelerated by COVID-19. Basically, we find ourselves being pretty much overwhelmed. When we're trying to sit down and focus from a learning point of view, we often got a lot of distractions around us. There's an impatience, there's a need to be able to learn quicker. We're untethered in that we are all over the place. We're working, living, learning, often in the same environment or disrupted environments. We've got information and learning on demand and sometimes on overload. So how do we decipher what it is we need to learn and when we need to learn it? Collaborative and social. So more and more we've got tools around how we are learning, and that distracts us even further into where do we spend our time? Where do we find relevance? What is it that we should be doing at any given point in time? And I think there's a real need to look at it from an empowerment perspective, accessibility to good quality learning experiences at the point and at that moment you need them. The reality of where we are today, and then this notion of flow learning. So whether that's learning in the flow of work, learning in the flow of life, whatever way you want to look at it, it's something that needs to keep happening. People are curious creatures by nature, and there's an increased demand in people wanting to have access to the right thing at the right moment in time. And that's where the topic around micro-learning comes to play. And I'm going to talk to you on 3 areas today: 1, micro moments; 2, micro credentials; and 3, social learning. So let's kick off with what are micro moments. So Google describes micro moments as intent-rich moments when a person turns to a device to act on a need. And I can almost guarantee that every one of you today will have done this at least once. So you turn there when you want to know something, and we have Google that can give us some answers. When you want to do something, you want to go somewhere, or you want to buy something. So these are micro moments, and unconsciously or subconsciously, all of the time in these micro moments, we are learning. I've got a 15-year-old son, Callum, who is full of fast facts. And a lot of the fast facts that he comes up with is because he's constantly researching and looking at things online and coming across YouTube videos that he's watching and learning some of the most random and extraordinary types of facts. But at the end of the day, that's examples of micro moments. So 91% of smartphone users turn to the smartphone for ideas whilst doing a given task. So it might be that you're looking at it from a research point of view. And again, to that point of learning in the flow of life, we're actually learning more than we realize we're learning every day as we go along. So it's ingrained behavior. It's something that we are doing all the time. So when we think about seizing micro moments, when we think about that in the context of a learning and performance ecosystem, and this could be within the context of academia, the context of the world of work, in my world as an entrepreneur and a business owner, learning and performance ecosystem shifts the behavior towards key drivers that impact business outcomes. Okay, so from a learning and performance ecosystem, there's 5 key areas to focus on. Looking at people, understand what drives people, what is the motivations, what is the process of how people go within the context of work or in the context of study. Why do they go there? Why do they go to the phone? What do they go to look up? So by understanding that behavior, by understanding the way people are looking at different types of content, you can get a lot of insights and then design an organizational structure that is effective for learning and performance ecosystem, where micro-learning is a part of the strategy around that. The content, so leverage content across all different types of formats of content. Use videos, use animations, use e-learning assets, use podcasts, webinars, all sorts of different types of learning assets that can be formal and they can be informal. So we're in this context of this webinar doing a formal learning event. Started at a particular time, it ends at a particular time. It's structured by invitation and it's live, possibly being pre-recorded, and then it will be available as a webcast later on. And that's an example of driving the use of technology to enable these experiences to be more accessible to more people. So the shift in the middle, you see, I start from where I want to know, which is an awareness. I want to know something, get the notice, get the commitment. Then I want to learn something. I want to find out more about it. My curiosity kicks in. I want to then practice it so you have engagement. Then once I know it, I want to be able to do something with that. I want to be able to perform. I want to apply it. I want to refine it. I want to get better at it. And then the advocacy component where I want to grow. I want to reflect. I want to sustain. And so that cycle goes on in the context of micro-learning and micro-moments. From a business impact point of view, I'm not going to talk too much to that side of it, but effectively a big part of what is driving learning and performance ecosystems is to close skills gaps, increase engagement, create a mechanism where continuous learning can happen. So learning can happen all of the time, both formally and informally, driving digital capability and adoption, and fundamentally having a measurement, having a way to be able to measure around the circle from awareness through engagement, performance, and advocacy. Has learning taken place, and how effective was the learning that we put together? So it's a little bit on micro moments, and I'll happily answer. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat, as Epik said. Second topic, going to talk to you a little bit about micro-credentials. So micro-credentials are certifications that verify an individual's competence in a specific skill or set of skills. So macro, you'd be looking at something like a degree, generally certificate-based programs. Micro-credentials are the small parts of the skills that you acquire throughout that learning journey that are generally built up in some form of stackable way, although they don't necessarily have to be. So I think, again, back to what has made the change, what has made the shift towards all of this micro. Is it really going to be there to stay for the future? And I think most of it's around this new reality and trends that we've got, the cost of higher education, even accessibility to higher education, not just from a cost point of view, but from what's happened in terms of the online space of learning. Huge challenges around the relevant skills and competencies of graduates. So the disruption in the labour markets being caused by automation and digitisation has been really, really intensified by the pandemic. And as a result of the automation and digitisation and what's happening through the fourth industrial revolution, what people need to know to be able to deliver at a particular job level is a set of skills that looks different today to what it looked like in years gone past. And that rapid pace of change is why we need to think about how we build in this micro-credential world so that we have the ability to make sure that the micro-credentials that we're learning are firstly relevant. So is it relevant in being tied to an industry and or a community need? Is it accredited? Has it got some form of recognition by a professional or some form of accrediting body? Does it have a credibility? Is it standardized? Does it meet a government set or a standard? It needs to be assessed through either assignment through test or through practical application. So looking at the assessed and assessment component, the flexibility, the pace and or structure of the micro-credential can be personalized by the learner, and then stackable. So a stack or a combination that can be flexibly designed by the individual who's wanting to acquire a specific end outcome of being competent in a particular area can make that pathway up. And these are ultimately what are referred to in the world of micro-credentials as being quality markers. And the quality markers are things where fundamentally looking at transferability of credentials or micro-credentials from one institution to another, from one workplace to another, is really forcing a significant rethink in how accrediting bodies and qualification frameworks are being established in different countries around the world. So different levels of readiness to where countries are adopting quality frameworks and learning frameworks that align to micro-credentials is moving also at quite a rapid pace now to be able to keep up with industry demand for specific skills. Micro-credential topology. So basically what this slide's here showing that it comes in many configurations. So sometimes people think a micro-credential has to be an online credential. It can also be an offline credential. It can be in person, but it needs to, again, be very focused on achieving and developing a particular skill. So a micro event happens in a short space of time. It's a short credential. It's a specific skill. It could be at a fixed pace, or it could be self-paced. It could be through a cohort of learning. It could be independent learning, or both. Credential in its format, or a digital credential. So it still could be issuance of a physical certificate or a digital credential that potentially lives on the blockchain as a part of a learning record store. And it could be from an indicator of achievement, that it's participatory, it's demonstrated competence, or it's demonstrated mastery. So all of the topography that you see here talks back to the stackability of different ways in which micro-credentials are actually designed and developed. And then the last part of what I wanted to talk to you today, the last few minutes before we go into Q&A at the end, from a social learning perspective. And I think this is a really interesting topic for those of you who are attending, to think again around how from our micro moments and our learning through going onto our device, equally how does social learning evolve and happen? And a lot of this can be really designed within organizations and within institutions. It can be planned, but a lot of it happens on the back of the micro moments that have happened. So some of the different social learning approaches, so going from learning to work to learning from work, bringing learning content to people in a really modern way that people can ingest it easily. So FAQs and forums is one way in which social learning can take place. People are curious to go and find information. They might be part of a forum, they might be part of a blog, they might be part of something where they're engaging either in a synchronous or asynchronous manner with others. Organizational wikis, so setting up an inter-organizational wiki, which brings and extracts knowledge from within an organization or from within an institution. So it's designed to bring the language and bring the knowledge of the organization into one place. Chatbots, great source of knowledge, and obviously moving from chatbots and informational bots into more transactional bots and service bots as that technology starts to evolve, brings a social context to how we engage with potentially a non-human before we engage with a human in order to get answers and information that we need. Observational learning. I think this is one of the things that people struggled with the most when we were all learning in an online environment through the pandemic and through various different lockdowns. Just not being able to observe the way others do it, unless you've got a very sort of clever way of using technology to do that. Just the observational learning and sitting and watching people as they learn, or watching people interact with something that they're doing and being able to learn through observation. Gamification and rewards. People like to compete, people like to be on a leaderboard, people like to participate in teams, and gamification and rewards, even if it's a digital badge, is a really, really strong incentive to create good learning culture and good learning behavior. And then finally to that culture shift. So it's a shift in culture, and a lot of organizations that we work with talk about the learning culture, and they measure the learning culture of their organization. And a big part towards that is how effectively can they get engagement of people within that organization in the context of learning and sharing that learning with others. So that's the end of what I prepared in terms of my slides. I'm really happy to engage and talk with you a little bit more around any of those topics or anything in the EdTech space, or if you're interested around my entrepreneurial journey of getting here. And yeah, last sort of quote to end on is that we must change not only what we learn, but also how we learn. And I just ask you to reflect on that a little bit, because I think from again, back to the lifelong learning continuum and where we are today to where we need to be, we must change how we learn. And I think a big part of thinking about that is how we design learning from the context of my organization and deliver learning in a different way.